Welcome to Create More Intimacy, a podcast for men. I'm Elisa Stoddard, and I help successful men stop chasing sex and start building real connection so they finally feel close, connected, and wanted again. You know that feeling when you can sense it building? Your jaw tightens, your chest gets hot, your face gets hot. You know you should walk away, take a breath, do something. But before you know it, you have said something sharp and maybe even cruel. And now the room is quiet. She isn't saying anything. You already know what she's thinking. And you hate that you let it happen again. The shame comes in quick and hot. That sinking feeling in your gut when the anger fades and all that's left is the guilt and regret. You tell yourself you will do better next time, but you've said that before. You've probably even read books or watched videos or told yourself you just need to control your temper. That's not really the problem. Problem isn't the anger, it's what's underneath it. This episode is not about fixing your wife or learning to count to 10 before you lose it. It's about understanding what's actually happening inside of you when anger takes over. Because once you see that clearly, you can finally start to change it. Welcome to episode 27, Why You Keep Losing Your Temper and How to Stop Feeling So Guilty After. Let me tell you about a client I worked with a few years ago. He's the kind of man that most people would admire and think he was very successful. He built his own company, he employed dozens of people, he made excellent money, and always carried himself like someone completely in control. But in his personal life, and even in his leadership, his anger was running the show. He would use it to shut people down. When his wife asked questions he did not want to answer, he would get loud and defensive and dismissive. When his team brought up concerns at work, he would just cut them off or change the subject or get irritated to the point that they backed off and knew not to mess with him. It worked. They stopped challenging him, but it also isolated him. I remember distinctly a conversation one day where I told him, they probably think you're the asshole in the room. He did not like hearing that. But he knew it was right. His anger had become a tool to keep control. It was easier to push people away than to admit he didn't have all the answers. And for men like him, anger often isn't about rage necessarily. It's about fear. The fear of being questioned, the fear of not knowing, the fear of looking weak. He'd spent years believing that a man was meant to have the answer and fix the problems and never show uncertainty. So when he didn't know something, he panicked. But panic doesn't look good on a man like him. So it came out as anger. That is what so many men don't realize. When you feel cornered or challenged and your instinct is to dominate, correct, or dismiss, that is not confidence talking. That is fear wearing a mask. And here's the thing. That fear, it doesn't make you weak. It just means that no one taught you another way to respond. That's what's really hiding under anger. When I work with men, one of the first things we talk about is what happens in that split second before the blow up, not after when guilt kicks in, but before, when something small suddenly feels like a gigantic threat. It is rarely about the thing itself. It isn't about the dishwasher or the way she said something or that one comment in a meeting. It's about what those moments represent. Most men have been trained since they were young to be steady and competent and reliable, to figure things out, to know what to do. So when something happens that pokes at that, when you feel uncertain, misunderstood, or like you're being questioned, that stirs up something much deeper. You might not even recognize it as fear. It could feel more like irritation, come across as defensiveness, or that need to shut the conversation down before it goes somewhere uncomfortable. But underneath all of that is usually something much more human, a sense of inadequacy or confusion or even shame. And when those feelings surface, anger steps in to protect you. Anger is quick and powerful and far too familiar. It gives you a sense of control, at least for the moment. It's the body's way of saying, I do not like this feeling and I feel small, and so I will just get big instead. That's what my client was doing. I don't think he actually intended to come across as the bully. He was trying not to feel powerless. But here's the hard part. The very thing that helped him feel strong in the moment was the same thing that made him feel ashamed later, because deep down, he knew his reaction did not match who he wanted to be. He did not want to be the man who silenced people. He wanted to be the man who was respected and trusted and calm under pressure. And that's probably true for you, too. You do not want to be the guy everyone tiptoes around. You just don't know what else to do when you feel cornered or misunderstood. That is what is really beneath anger most of the time. Not hatred and not cruelty, just a man who never learned what to do with the feelings underneath the surface. When you uncover that, you start to see how something can shift. You begin to realize that anger is not the enemy, it's a signal. It's your body's way of saying, there is something here I don't know how to handle. And when you treat it that way, then it stops running the show. You can pause instead of react. You can stay in the moment instead of exploding and pushing everybody away. You can respond with strength rather than reactivity. That's when everything starts to change at home, at work, everywhere. Once you start to see that anger is a signal, not a flaw, the question becomes, well, what do you do with it? You can't just tell yourself to calm down. We know that doesn't work. It's like trying to stop a storm by yelling at the wind. Instead, start by noticing what is happening to you. Not just around you, but that moment when your body tightens or your chest heats up and your thoughts start racing. That's your first clue. That's when you can pause and say, something in me feels threatened right now. It sounds simple, but that awareness is what can change the pattern. Because now you're not lost in the reaction, you're observing it. You are choosing to be aware instead of controlled. When my client started practicing this, he told me he felt like he was walking a tightrope at first. He said, I can feel it coming up and I want to go off, but now I can see it before I do. Now I can see it before I do. It's right there, that moment of recognition. It's the beginning of emotional maturity. You cannot control whether you get triggered, but you can control and you should control what you do next. Here's what this looks like in real life. When your wife asks something that stings, instead of defending or dismissing, pause, take a breath, notice what you're feeling before you react. Ask yourself, what part of me just got poked here? You might realize that it's embarrassment or fear of not measuring up or frustration that she does not see what you've already done. But that pause gives you access to choices. And that choice is that choice is power. The kind that doesn't come from intimidation, but from self-control. Here's what most men miss. You might think you are using anger to take control or to set the tone or to stop the argument or make the point or whatever. But in reality, anger is the one controlling you. When anger runs the show, it decides what gets said, how deep conversations go, and how close anyone can get to you. It chooses for you who you will be in that moment, what you will lose, and how long the distance will last afterward. It gives you the illusion of strength while quietly robbing you of the connection. It lets you win an argument, but lose the intimacy. It gives you control of the room, but it also takes away your peace. That is the cruel trade-off that anger makes. Sure, it gives you the upper hand in the moment, and then hands you guilt when it's all over. And you know that feeling, that regret afterward. The part where you want to fix it, but you don't know how. That's when shame kicks in, and you start to believe something's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're simply stuck in a pattern that's been running your life for years. Breaking the pattern's hard, but it starts with humility and a willingness to say, hey, maybe I don't know how to do this part yet. And sure, that's uncomfortable. It can bruise your ego a bit, but it is the only way out. Once you can see anger for what it really is, a protector, rather than a problem, you can start to take back your authority. You can be the one who decides when to speak, when to pause, and when to repair. And that's what real leadership looks like at work and at home. A man who can master his anger isn't less powerful. He's more powerful. He isn't controlled by his emotions anymore. He's guided by the awareness and not the reaction. And one of the crazy outcomes is that people feel safer around him. And that safety is what rebuilds trust. That's when your wife can start to open up to you again and have difficult conversations with you. That's when your kids stop hiding from you. That's when people at work start coming to you instead of avoiding you, instead of gossiping about you behind your back. Anger doesn't have to be the thing that costs you the relationship. You just have to stop letting it call the shots. Let's talk about what happens after you lose it. Yes, the anger fades, the adrenaline drops, and then you're left with that heavy silence and regret. And then you're left with that heavy silence. You tell yourself that you will apologize later, but you don't know how to start that conversation. You don't want to make it worse, so you just stay quiet. And she stays quiet, and then the distance settles in. You might try to make up for it in other small ways, like maybe you start helping out more around the house, or you bring something home, a gift. Or maybe you just pretend it didn't happen, but you both know it's still there. It's in the air. The air is different. It's heavy. What you are really feeling underneath is guilt, and guilt, when it's unprocessed, turns to shame. That's what keeps this cycle alive. Shame tells you you are the problem. It convinces you that you've gone too far and that change isn't possible. And once that belief takes hold, it becomes easier to protect yourself than to repair and connect. And that's when anger comes back, not as rage, but as armor. It shows up as sarcasm and withdrawal and silence and resentment, and it convinces you that staying closed off keeps you safe. But what you're really doing is protecting the version of yourself that doesn't know what to do with vulnerability, the one who was taught to keep it together no matter what. The one who never saw a man model what healthy emotional control looks like. This is not at all about becoming calm all the time or never feeling angry again. It's about learning how to stay in control of yourself when emotions do come up. That is power. Every time you pause, every time you take ownership instead of reacting, you're reprogramming your nervous system and you're teaching your body that safety doesn't come from control. It comes from awareness. You're showing yourself that you can handle discomfort without blowing up or shutting down. And that's how real confidence is built. It isn't in pretending to know everything. It's in trusting that you can handle anything. That's what makes your relationship stronger. That's what earns you respect, and not because you demanded it, but it's because you lived it. It's because you lived it. And that's where the healing happens. By taking control of your reactions. When you start to do this work, the kind of work I do every day with men just like you, there's a moment where you realize something simple, but absolutely life-changing. You were never actually in control when you were angry. Anger had you on a leash. But when you slow down, when you start to pay attention to what is really going on underneath, you get that control back. And it's not over everyone else. It's over yourself. That's the kind of strength your marriage and your kids and your work actually need from you. Not the loud, forceful kind, but the calm, grounded, kind person who earns quiet respect all on its own. If this episode is stirring up something inside of you, I invite you to sit with it for a bit. Think about the last time you lost it and what was really happening inside of you in that moment. What part of you felt unseen, unappreciated, or afraid? That is where the real work begins. When you start to understand that part of yourself, then anger no longer controls you and calls all the shots. You do. You will find yourself reacting less and listening more. You will notice you have patience, more influence, more peace, and not because life and these conversations got easier, but because you did the work to grow stronger. If you're tired of feeling stuck in the same pattern of trying to manage anger without ever really understanding it, you do not have to do it alone. There's a path forward, and it starts with being honest about where you are right now. Take care. I'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. If something in this episode hit home, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more men find the support they need. And if you are ready to get help or take the next step, you'll find the link to book a free call in the show notes. I'll see you next time.